Tonight on The Story, the 118th Congress of the United States has been eventful, from supporting Ukraine against the Russian invasion to a late deal to raise the debt ceiling and avoid a costly default. The priorities for those in D.C. seem to never end. But how are Oregon's elected officials standing up for us, some 2,500 miles away on the other side of the country? U.S. Senator Ron Wyden joins us live in studio. Here's The Story. I'm Pat Doris. Welcome to The Story. You know, we like to mix things up on this show. So tonight we are doing something very different. I'm here live with Oregon Senior Senator Ron Wyden to talk about topics that you care about. Senator Wyden, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, delighted that you could make it. Before we get going, though, I've got my questions, but I want you in the audience to tell us what you want us to ask the senator. If you have an urgent question, email it to us right now and we'll try hard to get it in. The email is thestory@kgw.com. All right, let's begin with wildfires. We've spent the last 2 nights showing viewers how both Pacific Power and PGE are getting ready with their meteorology departments for the fire season and possibly shutting off power. What are you doing on the national level to help us?
I'm focused really on a couple of things. These are not your grandfather's fires.
No, they're very
They are
bad.
bigger, they're hotter, they're more powerful.
Yeah.
Senator Mike Crapo and I have written a law to encourage prevention, and it's already saved, according to the government, about $2 billion. What we did is we said we'll fight the big fires from the disaster fund and not keep raiding the prevention money. So I'm going to keep building on that with additional efforts to thin out the forest.
And prevention money and disaster money, nobody knows what that means.
Yeah, prevention is going in there and thinning out these overstocked forests. And the Crapo-Wyden law, as I said, has saved $2 billion. We've got to do more of that. But the second part of what I'm focused on is getting fire salaries up. Those people that are working in the woods, we got a boost for them after the pandemic. But now I just finished 7 town hall meetings in rural Oregon. I see help wanted signs. They're paying more than the fire guys get. Interesting.
All right. And the advantage of taking from one fund and not the other is the disaster funds, they were running out of money, weren't they, every year?
No.
Or was it the prevention fund?
It was the prevention money, because what would happen is they didn't calculate the budgets right. So they didn't really figure out what they'd need to put fires out. Then they came along and raided the prevention money. And Senator Crapo and I said, that's goofy even by Washington, D.C. standards. Let's keep the prevention money intact. Let's strengthen it by doing more thinning and doing more preventive work and fight the big fires with the disaster money. The government said we're saving $2 billion this way.
Okay, well, that's encouraging. Let's turn now to the merger between Live Golf and the PGA. Seems basically like Live has bought the PGA. You've said that it poses risks to America's national interest, particularly with respect to foreign investment in U.S. real estate, such as locations neighboring military facilities or sensitive manufacturing places. So are you saying that the Saudis could use golf courses to spy on military bases?
Let me make it even more blunt. I think that the Saudis have showed utter contempt for U.S. law. And we know a little bit about this right here at home, because we live in southeast Portland, not far from our house. A Saudi national ran over a youngster. And then right before that Saudi national was going to go to trial, Portland police collected evidence indicating that the Saudis came in and cut the ankle bracelets and the like.
Right, that was the Fallon Smart case.
That was
All right, we're going to get to that. But my question is, do you think that there's going to be spies using golf courses next to military bases to spy?
There's certainly some national security issues there, and I'm on the Intelligence Committee.
Right, so tell us what you know.
Well, what I'm more concerned about is that, you know, the Saudis are going to try to lubricate all these deals with the PGA, and in effect, we'll be seeing our tax laws, I'm the chairman of the Senate Finance Committee, used for an advantage for the Saudis and not to help us. So there are national security questions, there are big-time economic questions, and the fact is that, you know, the Saudis will pound us at the gas pump every chance that they get, and now they're going to use the tax laws to try to lubricate the deals that help them.
You've also accused them of trying to sports wash by buying essentially the PGA. But that Saudi fund also owns European soccer teams. It owns 5% in Electronic Arts, also in Activision. It owns part of the concert promoter Live Nation. It has stakes in the cruise operator Carnival Corp. Also Zoom and Uber. So are all of these companies helping to sports wash?
It depends on a country's history. I mean, this is a country, Saudi Arabia, that in effect killed Jamal Khashoggi, turned a blind eye to Fallon Smart, using the tax laws to lubricate deals that help executives rather than our country. And so each instance has got to be evaluated individually.
Okay, and on the Fallon Smart, she was killed in August of 2016. She was a sophomore at Franklin High School. He was a senior at Portland Community College, swerved around some cars that had stopped for her in the crosswalk. And you're right, he was charged with manslaughter, and before he could be prosecuted, his country whisked him out of here. So just last week, the State Department formally passed, I believe, the Fallon Smart program.
Pat, this was something that I pushed for ever since her death. And nothing is going to bring Fallon Smart back. But this at least sends a strong message that our country isn't going to turn a blind eye towards these kinds of things that, in my view, that's why I said the Saudis have a track record that shows utter disregard for U.S. law.
Okay, but what does this new program do? It denies visas to people that might be connected with that?
No, if there is evidence that people have taken beyond reasonable steps to help an individual who's charged, they could be sanctioned under this new policy.
Okay, and sanctions means maybe their bank account's frozen or they're not allowed into
They're not allowed in.
Okay, and that's a big deal to them.
Certainly sends a strong message to a lot of those Saudis with deep pockets if they've been involved in helping this.
Yeah, okay. I know you just returned from Eastern Oregon where you've been doing town hall meetings. One of the big headlines out there is it sounds like they're finally going to get some fast internet.
They are, and it's something I'm very proud of. I worked with the Secretary of Commerce, Gina Raimondo, talked to her 3 times at length about the fact that we have been underserved for broadband because of the way the federal government calculates our housing patterns. Our houses, particularly in rural areas, are further apart than the government's calculations. I got the evidence to them. We now got the biggest contribution in Oregon history for broadband, and here's why this is so important. I got more questions during my 7 rural town meetings about broadband than anything else, because broadband is to rural life what water is to farmers. Without it, they can't survive.
Yeah. All right, speaking of water, there's a big problem with the water in Morrow and Umatilla counties. People who get their water from the wells there, mainly low-income Spanish speakers. For 30 years, they've had a problem with their wells being contaminated. What can you do to help with that?
Well, at my town hall meeting there, we looked particularly at the question of the water patterns, looking at the risk, some of the potential liabilities. There's a company involved. We're trying to mobilize the government agencies. We've contacted EPA, the state agencies, and we're all in on this. I mean, the idea that you can't have clean drinking water in a country as rich and good as ours is unacceptable. So we're mobilizing the resources at the federal, state, and private level.
Okay, excellent. Let's go to a viewer question that we do have in. A viewer wants to know, would Senator Wyden support term limits for members of Congress? And yes, if yes, how does that process start?
Well, the founding fathers already debated term limits, and they decided that term limits were an election. So I think they made a lot of good calls, particularly on things like the First Amendment, which in many respects is more important than government. I don't think Western civilization is going to end if there are term limits. But the people who really win, Pat, are the bureaucrats, because the bureaucrats stay and stay and stay, and they take advantage of those who are inexperienced.
So is that yes, you support term limits, or
well,
no, you don't?
It depends on how you write it, but I don't think the world will end if you have them. But I want Oregonians to know that I think the big winners in a lot of these term limit proposals that have been offered so far are the bureaucracy.
Sure.
The bureaucracy will be ecstatic because they'll be able to take advantage of people who don't have expertise.
Okay, excellent. Thank you. One other question from a viewer, from Sam. What can Congress do to ensure higher education is more affordable for Oregonians in the first place? The prices just keep going.
First thing we ought to do is lower the interest rates, and that's something that I'm talking about in terms of the loans. But I also think we ought to introduce some competitive forces in the way education is financed. And I've had a bipartisan proposal called Know Before You Go. Education is the biggest expenditure we make with absolutely no competitive forces. And I think people could get more value for their education dollar with the kind of proposal I just made.
Sounds good. All right, Senator Ron Wyden, thank you for being here. I appreciate you taking the time to talk to us about these topics.
Let's do it again.
Okay, I look forward to that. Coming up next on the story, Portland's daytime camping ban is set to begin in just over a week. But a question that many of you have is this thing going to be enforced? We'll hear what Multnomah County District Attorney Mike Schmidt is saying about that when the story returns. Let's talk about Portland's upcoming camping ban. We've talked about it a lot, but we're not done yet. It was passed exactly 3 weeks ago and will be slowly phased in next month, according to the city. Here's what it will do. It bans camping on city property from 8 a.m. until 8 p.m. That means that tents on sidewalks have to be taken down and moved. It also creates a complete ban on camping in areas like parks, near schools and daycares, and in high crash corridors. Homeless people can be warned to move their tents once per day, and if they're warned twice and still refuse to move, then on the third time they can be fined up to $100 and also face up to 30 days in jail, at least in theory. But the big key is enforcement. It's that there must be places for homeless people to go when it's enforced. It has to be an open spot for them to go when they're told to move. That's because of the Boise v. Martin Supreme Court decision that's influenced camping policy really across the country. Multnomah County District Attorney Mike Schmidt says he does not think that jail time and fines will actually be used if someone is cited for violating the ban. He says that during his conversations with city leaders about enforcement, the goal of the ban is not criminal charges and consequences.
My goal will be the same as the city's goal. If a prosecution is commenced, that our goal is going to be to also get that person connected to services. So I've already been in communication and contacts with the city, with the county to say, hey, what resources can we have in the courtroom? So when that person shows up, we can say, hey, Mr. So-and-so, connect with this person here, and they're going to get you connected to resources. It's still our hope that that's how those cases could be handled. But we will be looking at every referral to our office on a case-by-case basis, and if we have the evidence that we need to enforce it, we will.
So why does Schmidt not think that jail and fines are a good option to use to enforce the ban? Well, he says they would not fix the actual problem.
So philosophically, I mean, and I've said this over and over again, a jail bed is our most expensive housing option in our community. It's like $314 a day or something like that. And it's the least effective at long-term stabilization. So it's not a cure. It should not be a housing substitute. It should be in the rarest of occasions. And quite frankly, I don't even see these cases, I don't see jail being used realistically. Also, a fine seems a little bit pointless to somebody who's indigent and can't pay for anything as well. But I think just having the contact of the court system, we've seen benefits in our treatment courts that just showing up and getting people there can make those connections. So yeah, I think still if the approach was, oh, let's just put everybody in jail, that would be a bad approach. That would be money wasted, and it wouldn't actually fix the problem at all. But my hope is that's not where this is going, that we can bring people into the court system and we can hopefully be connectors and facilitators of those connections.
The district attorney says that actually prosecuting these camping ban violations will be incredibly work intensive compared to other misdemeanor cases. For example, criminal trespass or disorderly conduct cases may require testimony and reports from one police officer, but the camping ban cases would need testimony and reports from potentially 3 different officers if different officers are giving each citation to that one person. And not only that, prosecutors would have to prove that services or shelter were available to that person each time they were cited after refusing the help in the first place.
Clearly, one of the defenses would be, yeah, they said I need to get off the streets, but there was nowhere for me to go. So we are going to have to be able to prove that, no, there was an option, there was a place for you to go, this is what it was. So they will be more intensive for us to prove than a run-of-the-mill misdemeanor. Okay,
so here's my opinion on this. The point of having possible jail time or fines is to motivate people to change their behavior. Right now, the worthless Measure 110 citations, for example, are as a joke, so we see what a toothless penalty has done for drug use. If you really want people to stop camping all over our city, they need consequences if they refuse to stop. And no, I don't think anyone wants to see houseless folks actually thrown into jail. But without the realistic possibility of that happening, many people are not going to change. That's what we have now. And how's that working for us? It's not. So, it's promising that the new camping ban actually does have teeth, at least in theory. But now the district attorney is saying, I don't see jail being used. Commissioner Rene Gonzalez said something similar. Okay. Instead, the DA envisions a world where people are told to go to court and they show up, and while they're there, they're told to connect with services, and magically they do. Permit me to doubt. Instead of telling anyone paying attention that this law will not be enforced, how about enforcing it? How about bringing consequences to folks who refuse to stop camping wherever they want? Because without that, we have just another hollow promise of a camping ban that will make no difference. And the many who already felt their faith in government leaders slipping will feel it fall to a brand new low. That's my opinion anyway. What's yours? Let us know. Still to come on the story, one of the organizations that clears homeless camps in Portland loses a lawsuit that deals with what the group does with homeless people's belongings when they sweep a campsite. The judgment only amounts to a few $100s, but the case sets quite the precedent. Why attorneys say this could be the tip of the iceberg. When the story returns.
Coming up on KGW News at 6:30, Oregon has a new Secretary of State, and she has strong ties to the Portland area. A look at the governor's choice to fill the vacancy left by Shemia Fagan. Plus, thousands of flights delayed and canceled around the country right before the busy 4th of July holiday. We'll check out how it's affecting travelers at PDX. And just in time for the summer heat, free air conditioners for thousands of elderly and low-income Portlanders. We'll meet a woman who just got hers today. That's coming up at 6:30.
We've been monitoring ambulance response times, namely the dismal results from American Medical Response in Multnomah County. But AMR, as they're known, just got the green light to expand into Washington County starting August 1st. We told you this was coming, but county commissioners just unanimously voted to switch from Metro West to AMR. Metro West's response times were well below standards in Washington County. Investigator Evan Watson got his hands on the contract between the county and AMR. Right now it lasts for 5 years with the option to extend it to 11 years. It also lists acceptable response times depending on where you are. For emergencies in urban areas, acceptable is the crew getting there within 10 minutes, suburban within 12 minutes, and rural within 30 minutes. Part of AMR's explanation for poor response times in Multnomah County is staffing shortages, but the company blames that on Multnomah County's 2 paramedic requirement. Washington County does not have that requirement, and AMR says they've been hiring a lot of Metro West employees to come work for them. AMR says it's already hired more than 90% of the EMS workers it needs to have on board by August 1st. So in theory, some of their woes in Multnomah County will not be as apparent in Washington County, but time will tell. For homeless folks living in tents across the city, a historic ruling against an organization that clears campsites could set quite a precedent moving forward. Rapid Response BioClean has been found liable for confiscating a homeless woman's personal belongings during a sweep and are being forced to compensate her to pay her for the value of the items they took. Blair Best shows us how the ruling could have long-term impacts.
There is a relentless grind to living on the streets in Portland. I'm just trying to survive.
They follow you around and post on you and post on you and post on you, so you're in a constant state of move.
This tired narrative defines Dave's every move.
Can't get anything done because you have to worry about moving your stuff and keeping it safe from them.
He's talking about Rapid Response BioClean, one of 2 commercial cleaning companies contracted by the city to clean and remove homeless camps throughout Portland. A historic ruling just came down in a 2020 lawsuit filed by a homeless person against Rapid Response. It found Rapid Response liable for wrongly throwing out personal property during a sweep here in the St. John's neighborhood. Rapid Response denies the claims, but owes about $400 in damages.
However, the Rapid Response employees did testify to taking everything that they removed that day to the dump.
Nate Haberman is one of the attorneys behind the case, the first of its kind in Portland.
And it sets an important precedent that under Oregon law, everybody's property is valued.
The city's campsite removal crews have cleared or removed 4,000 campsites in just the last 12 months. That's according to city data. Now, it's not clear if Rapid Response is responsible for all of those removals. But remember, this lawsuit was filed roughly 3 years ago, meaning there's been thousands of campsite removals since then. And some argue that Rapid Response has been doing this all along. Those living in this camp share that belief.
What it takes to live, they take it from you.
Following a camp cleanup, Rapid Response crews are required to store people's personal property, regardless of its condition, for 30 days, with the exception of things like weapons and drugs. After 30 days, the property is destroyed or donated.
They say they're putting it in storage, but it's never there.
This last time, I didn't get any of my hygiene stuff back. I didn't get any of my first aid stuff back.
Dave called 311 twice to report it.
I doubt it's going to do any damn good. You know.
Portland Mayor Ted Wheeler's office tells KGW they're glad the lawsuit is resolved and pleased with the improvements the program has made to property storage over the last 3 years. We called Rapid Response on Wednesday. They had no comment and weren't even interested in hearing our questions.
These people who have not had a voice for so long now do have a voice and are able to bring these cases and use the legal system to protect their property.
The attorneys behind this case are prepared to take on more cases like this and believe this could be just the tip of the iceberg. Blair Best, KGW News.
Thank you, Blair. That's the end of our show. Thanks so much for watching. By the way, we have seen all your emails coming in about Senator Wyden. Sorry we couldn't get to more of your questions, but it's great to know you care that much about it. We're going to try and do more of that. And remember, the story, our collective story, that never ends. Stick around now for the news at 6:30, and I'll see you right back here tomorrow.